It's been real cold lately, so I haven't been running out. So I haven't got mail for a while. And I got a call the other day from the mailman that my box was filling up, so I went out and got mail. And I'll explain a couple of things here. First, somebody gave me one of these Gorilla Pod things. And they actually work pretty good, but they aren't, normally I've got a couple of these Nikon cameras that I use, and they aren't really strong enough to hold one of them. But, I always thought it'd be nice, to use for a smartphone, because once in a while, I've got this Motorola Max phone that I use, and once in a while, when I'm out and about, I'll do videos with that. So I always thought it'd be nice to have a decent tripod for that. But the problem is, to get a connector. Well, I was watching a video from the old gardener guy the one day, and he was talking about these. Now that Joby, which makes this Gorilla thing, also makes this. And I don't remember exactly what this was called. Tight Grip. Grip Tight. It's made by the same company, and it is made to go on to these or any tripod because it's a 1/4-20 screw, so you can use it on any, even like these cheap little tripods. And they make two sizes of them. This is the extra large, but what they do is they clamp and they expand out. I did a video once a couple of years ago, I think, complaining that nobody made one. Well, it took them a couple of years, but they finally started making one. Because there's a lot of people, when they first get into doing videos, they'll do them with their phone, and they always fight with them. This thing, very simple, very secure. Actually, really good device. This part alone, the clampy part, is about 15 bucks. And they're all over on eBay. Not much to it, but it's got a spring in there that does it. Works very well. Good design, good simple design, and that's what I always look for in craft. But like I say, they are available, and these things, a combination of these two things, you can put your phone anywhere. Because these actually work pretty good, but what I ended up doing, the one that I have, I made an adapter so I could put it in my tripod. Then I was using it in some conglomeration to actually hold my phone, and it worked that way. But this, much slicker setup, and small enough that you can just slide it in your pocket. And like I say, work on any tripod, because like these little ones, they're available all over too, but you can buy them as a set with the tripod pretty cheap. They're about 15 bucks, and this is about 15. But for people starting out making videos, it's a lot better than fighting, because a lot of people are struggling with phone. They end up laying the phone down while they do something, and they're holding the phone in one hand, and it's always a circus doing it. So it's a lot better if you can get a decent holder, and this, I think, is the tool. Like I say, very simple design. They make them in two sizes, the normal one and the XL, and this is the XL because these Max phones have got a fairly big screen on them. But it's a good thing to have. Now, something I run into all the time is where people quit making stuff that I like. Like this radio is one that I have, and it runs off pen lights, and it's got an AC adapter too. But the other day, I got a call from my mom, and her radio died, and she had one similar to this. But now this, of course, has got all kinds of extra crap on it that I didn't want when I bought it, but it just come on the deal, like the weather thing and all that, and a clock that is a nuisance to try to set. I don't care for things that when they get too elaborate on them. And my mom's the same way. Now, she's got a radio that she uses during the night. She kind of listens to her radio all night long. Has this thing playing in the background. You know, like some people do. It's a little, you end up having weird dreams because your radio enters into your dreams. But she called me up, told me her radio had died. Well, she needed a new radio. Now I went in to town and I was looking to buy a, just a plain radio. Not something too exotic. And I couldn't find them. They had all kinds of them that were, with cranks built on them. And all this extra stuff that, that she wouldn't want to deal with. But I finally decided, instead of continuing to search around town, because I really wasn't having any luck, I went online and looked, and I found out that Sony actually has an eBay store. It's an authorized eBay seller for Sony, and they actually will not sell to somebody for resale. Like if somebody orders like 20 radios, they'll cancel the order. They just want to sell directly to consumers. And this radio's got everything she needed. And this was like 24 bucks, and it came really quick. Well, it actually got more than she needed even, but not bad. But it runs on penlight batteries, or there's an AC cord inside. It's got your little handle. Just AM, FM, which again, like I say, is all you need. And another thing that I like, it's got the plain tuner where you can actually see the dial. It always annoys me when they put like a digital readout and then that's the first thing that dies on them. This looks like a good decent radio for that small amount of money. It does have an earphone plug, but it also has a tone setting, and it makes a difference, if you're listening to music or talk radio, which is what she listens to mostly, is AM talk radio. And it's nice to have the tone adjustment then. But this will be her radio. But she needed one that ran on penlight batteries, because she's got a supply of penlight batteries. But I was glad to find that. But it's funny, like I said, they don't stock stuff, the stuff that I normally use anymore. That's all kind of superseded by new, fancier stuff that costs you more and doesn't work as well as the old stuff. Like I've always been aggravated by new car radios. An old car radio, you had your on and volume, and you had your channel knob, and the fancier ones had where you could preset them with those push pins, in fact, some of the old table radios were even that way. But then the new ones, they try to incorporate all this other stuff into the radio, and it's all these little push button advances and stuff, I really think they're actually dangerous, because you can't run one of them without looking at it. Like a regular radio, you could run that without looking at it. Those new car radios, I don't care for those. It takes you way too long to figure out how to run them. I've got, my road grader has actually got it's a radio with a CD player and everything built into it, and it is that push button stuff. In fact, there's really no off on it. It's on. If the key is on, the radio is on. There's only a mute button. It just shuts the sound off, but the radio is still on all the time. I don't, a lot of them, they'll run, temperature, or even they run the phone too. Everything's got to be run through the radio. And I really prefer if they have that stuff separately. Like I say, you could run those. A regular radio, you could run without looking at them. But those new ones, they're a bugger. But I think this is the right radio for her. I think she'll be happy with that. Now I just got to make a point to run it in town someday and bringing it over to her. But I think this is one that she can run. Like I say, she likes to leave a radio on all night real low. But I've done that where then you wake up and thinking, what in the hell was I dreaming? And it was all because you had the radio running all night. You get weird ideas in your head. But she listens to like Coast to Coast, and that's on AM. But those kind of talk shows and stuff at night, they're kind of interesting. If you ever worked late hours, it's nice to have something like that going on. They used to do a lot of that. I used to be real fond of radio when I was a kid. The first radio I ever bought was one of those real small, little square or rectangular transistors. Bought at a little local general store for, I think, $2. And the funny part, I should look what it came. It had came with some of that silica moisture preventive stuff inside. This doesn't even have that. Got a decent sized compartment for the cord, which is good. But like I said, the one that I got had that little thing inside and it said do not remove. So I spent a long time trying to get my 9-volt battery to go into my little radio and keep that bag of that silica crap in there. And I ran it that way for a long time, but it was hard to get it to fit. But I didn't realize until years later that that stuff could be removed. But I used to like to listen to radio, even when they went to FM. For a long time, there wasn't anything on but classical music on FM, and then they finally started getting more, because the first ones were the National Public Radio on FM. But then our local NPR station for a while, they were running talk shows, like I've heard the War of the Worlds on radio, which is the way it was meant to be. Well, it was a story, but when they redid it for radio, and it's good. You can use your imagination on that stuff. But BBC did Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The whole book, which is not a short book, was done as a radio series, and that was good. There's several other ones that have been done that way. Even Lord of the Rings was done that way. And that again by the BBC, but I think they maybe have a better appreciation of radio over there than we do here. Because here it's music. Myself, I've got an old Zenith Transoceanic that's got the shortwave built into it, and I like playing with that. That's kind of interesting. And that's another thing. It used to be, when I was a kid, even on the small radios, you could pick up clean down to Mexico. At night, you could pick up stations a long ways away. But that's changed now. The antenna setup isn't as good. They try to keep you more local radio stations, within like 200 miles. But I think they want to keep the advertising more local based, for the radio stations. If they can sell local advertising, pays better than national advertising. But I think this will work. But we're going to have a few warm days here for a while now, which I'm glad to see because I'm getting tired. It was below zero for a long time, and we're above zero today, and I think we're even going to get above thaw one of these next days. So one of these days I'll run that radio into Ma.